It's certainly been my experience within business that any significant pivot that I've made has come as a result of having some sort of structured workflow process, just having a clear understanding of the delivery of what it is I'm trying to achieve. And from there, it's always been a formidable change. And in this episode, although we're talking in this series about communication, we're specifically talking about workflow, and we're talking about having things available like a knowledge base or a resource that you can pull in, you and your team can pull information from when required. And we're talking about having people available to mentor you, either remotely or however that looks. But it's certainly a powerful little ecosystem of tools when you've got process and workflows, when you have knowledge base, aka information available to you. And then you've got, available to you mentorship coming from either somebody who's been there and done it before. It might be a manager, or it might be someone that's, not going to judge you when you ask a question. So I know you're going to love this episode, guys. And once again, I'd love to hear your feedback. So please jump into the Facebook community and share your experience. Otherwise, enjoy the show. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome back to the Site Shed podcast. My name is Matt Jones, and you are joining me today with my co-host for this series, Aaron Salow. Aaron is from xoi.io out of the United States. Aaron, welcome back.
Thanks, Matt.
Aaron, this is a series we're talking about creating the ultimate communication framework in your trade business. In the first episode, we went pretty deep into the impacts of technology in modern business. And during that episode, we covered off on some pretty important areas of conversation, I think, relevant to anybody in any stage of business, not necessarily business owners. I think that was certainly relevant to a lot of technicians out there, staff, employees, so on and so forth, because we did cover off on some mindset things, whether we meant to or not, which was certainly in the space of being receptive to change and being willing to adopt new technologies and things like that. Guys, if you did not get a chance to listen to that episode, I encourage you to go check it out, because the way we structure these series is we do try and have the following episodes tie into the previous, so it will make a little bit more sense, I'm sure, if you do go check that out. You're joining us today in this episode because we're talking about the technicians' three lines of defense, which is workflows, knowledge base, and live calls. And this is, I suppose, rubber meets the road with you, Aaron, and especially your involvement with your business and so on and so forth, because I know these are things that you guys are very, very big on. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about this. We have spoken before about workflow. We've spoken before about knowledge base. We've never really talked much about live calls, but we've certainly never talked about all three of them together. So I think this is going to be an interesting episode.
Excited. Thanks for having me.
Okay, cool. So how did you come up with these three lines of defenses and why?
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting thing. You mentioned knowledge base and live calls and workflow. We kind of, my marketing team had to make it simple for me. So at XOI, we call it capture, coach, and collaborate. You have to have 3 C's, because otherwise, we'd forget that. I would. It was probably just for me. Capture being a workflow tool, just every job, capturing photo, video content, which a lot of guys do ad hoc basis, today. Coach being the knowledge base, being able to kind of have a central location. A lot of this information is still on paper for some guys. They're searching Google, they're going to their parts house, distributors, calling their boss, whatever the case may be. And then live video kind of being exactly what it sounds like, collaborate, see what you see, hear what you hear, talk with you about it in real time. I think the first piece you have to look at is this idea of kind of continuous use cases versus episodic. So a lot of times you'll see point solutions in technology like live video. It feels like, especially with the COVID stuff happening, everyone's coming out with their live video tool and they've all got one, and everyone can do it. They'll use, FaceTime's on the free end of the spectrum, FaceTime, Hangouts, things like that. And you got all these augmented reality companies that are coming to bear as well. But it's episodic in the face and the fact that it's only used when you have a problem, right? Same thing with knowledge base. You only need knowledge base when you need it. So they're fairly episodic, and when they're being used, when you absolutely need them. And I think as you look at technician adoption and value to organization, those are tough things to get across the finish line, meaning I can deploy the coolest AR tool in the world, and my tech still had to remember, oh yeah, I have a problem. Oh yeah, I have this app. Oh yeah, I had to open it. I haven't opened it in 2 months. I don't have a password anymore. All right, now I got to get my password. Screw all that. I'm going to go ahead and just call my buddy who knows more about the system than anyone else, right? So it's an example. And so I think as you look at those 3 lines of defense, it's first important to point out that there has to be a continuous use case, meaning there has to be a reason for a technician to use the technology in every job that benefits them, the office, and the customer in some meaningful way. And if you can, as a bonus, their fellow technicians as well. And so as we think about technology, the reason those things are important is that once you drive continuous use cases, things that really provide value, then you can start to initiate more episodic pieces, right? It's like this tool is being used every single day. I know I'm using it to provide value for myself. It also ties to my knowledge base. It also ties to a live video call. And so you can get some of those rich use cases, whereas today you see a lot of point solutions that only do one of those things, right? There's forms tools that kind of try to do workflow automation. You have tons of knowledge management, learning management systems out there. And like I mentioned, a lot of different variations of live call that you can go purchase and or use for free. And so I think you have to look at, how those pieces tie together, how they benefit stakeholders, like we talked about in the last episode, kind of that rule of 3. And that's how we think about it at XOI and where you actually can get the technology used.
Is it about essentially creating a process that involves workflow, knowledge base, and live call? Is that kind of what you were alluding to here?
Yeah. So I think when you think about Capture, it's about aligning a workflow tool with what's already being done. I think it's important to know this isn't a new process. It's what you're already needing to do on a job site. You talked a lot about in your show about education and how that's an important piece of what technicians do. So let's take what that educational process looks like. I'm educating the office on what's happening. I'm educating the customer on what's happening. How do I augment that workflow in a way that allows me to be faster, better, smarter, and get off a job site and get what I need, to benefit my day. Yeah. And then in that process, can I instigate other activities like knowledge base, like live call? And I have some examples of how that looks, but I think having that value every time is super important.
I can imagine a lot of the listeners and viewers out there are thinking right now, this all sounds fantastic, but wouldn't that mean the technician's got to be on site for 3 hours longer so we can create a workflow, add it to the knowledge base, then add a live call? Like, how does that all play out?
So a great example, a residential contractor of ours in Texas had called us because they wanted live calling. And the reason for that is that they have an install process. They installed 800 new HVAC units a year. So good sized organization. And they were having some real challenges with quality. And they said, look, we want to fire up a live call every time an install crew is done. And we want to see what's going on and make sure they do a checklist. They did their checklist. And so we dug in with them a little bit more. And we're like, help us understand. We got some of the numbers. We were digging in. And so what do they do today? So, we got this 45-point checklist and they're supposed to do all these quality checks. They fill them out. And I said, so they're pencil whipping them, right? And they're like, yeah, at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, more like on Friday, right? So they install all week. They got all the paperwork. They're like, here's all my quality checklist. Yep, boom, hand them in. I'm good to go. So we said, hey, what if we built a video workflow with Capture in our system that allowed you to build the steps of every install? Right? 12 steps to every install. And the way our system works is not only does it guide them through it, but it gives them PDF and video content at every step to guide the behavior. So step 1, they watch a video and then they perform that video. So they document that they did it correctly. Step 2, they watch the video on how to do it and they perform it. So in their world, they were like, hey, we can identify the way that we do things. Plus, I don't have a guy sitting there waiting for live calls at 800 installs a year. I want somebody that's going to be able to quickly know, here's the 12 steps. So it took these guys an additional 12 minutes to do these videos on every install. Now, in these guys' world, that's nothing, right? 12 minutes on a service call can be a chunk of time. On a 6-hour install, It's an easy investment to make when my reservices are 22%, you know, and I'm driving back because guys are forgetting to turn on. I mean, the silliest one that any residential contractor listening will laugh at is I installed the unit in the summer. We put in the furnace side as well that had a gas component, and we didn't turn the gas valve on. So I'm rolling a truck back out there in the winter to turn the gas valve on, which pisses everyone off, right? So just little stuff like that. Like, how do we validating that these things are done? But I think that's a great example of taking the shiny object out of the conversation and actually thinking about what the right solution looks like. And in this case, this company reduced their reservices by 80% last year, simply because they were walking through a process that got done the same way every single time. They documented it. They created a massive deliverable to the customer. Customers not, they're spending $25,000 in some cases, right? Like, their deliverable is like, okay, it works. It's cool in here.
Yeah.
Well, man, what kind of care did you take throughout this thing to make sure it's going to work for the next 10 years? And so they do spot checks with live video, right, to pull that piece in. But the consistency was in saying, let's execute something we know that can create our process every single time, and people don't stray. And I think that was an important component for that particular use case.
That's a super, super common problem that I hear through our community members and even just friends and business owners, like saying, you know, for example, you know, a mate of mine was a builder, and he was saying this, like his fear now, and I remember him telling me this a couple of years ago. He was saying, I don't like hiring very super experienced guys anymore. He says, because when they come and work for me, they have like this barrier of defense up against doing things the way that I want them done. And they want to do things the way they know how to do things and have always done things, to the point where like he got rid of a bunch of his like really long-term experienced staff because they just refused to change. They refused to follow company procedures. And he says they were by far the best workers we had, but they were also creating this super negative energy, and a lot of the younger guys were feeding off it and sort of, you know, duplicating it, you know, like just bad leadership. And so I think that's really, really important culture to kind of build, you know, a culture that's like willing and wanting to work towards that common goal of following and delivering a product or a service or an installation or whatever in a consistent manner. And they can kind of see how important that is from a business point of view, which then comes back as well to training and communicating with your team and making sure they understand. And you touched on it earlier, like getting them to buy into that process, finding a way for them to buy into it. Because in my experience, if you're giving them an instruction or an order, you know, it's nowhere near as well as received as them coming up with a process or part of a process and then wanting to go out and follow it, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you get the impact to the rest of the organization too, you know, and so I think about, you know, again, continuous workflows like sales opportunities. You know, what does the sales team or quoting department need? And what's a big driver of pain for them in the organization? Well, a lot of times in the commercial side, it's, I got 2 pictures from a tech and 2 lines of text on an email. I'm almost always calling them. What did you mean by this? Which corner does the boom crane go? Where's the electrical outlets? This roof pitch is funny. Like, there's all these things that I want to get a good quote out. So here's the 5 things I need every single time. We had a contractor that said, how do new sales opportunities come into business? And they said, well, the tech calls dispatch. I said, okay, what happens then? Well, dispatch gets the sales request or quote opportunity, preventative repair, whatever, to the sales manager. Okay, what does the sales manager do? Well, they look at their sales team and define who it goes to. Each one of the sales guys has a specific type of equipment, right, that they're responsible for. I said, do those guys really know what they need to see as a quote every single time? Why don't we just have the technician say, hey, if it's a chiller, it looks like this. If it's a, you know, water top, whatever the case may be, boom, 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 boom. Here are the 3, 4, 5 things I need. Bypass dispatch, bypass the sales manager, and send it straight with content to the salesperson. Oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense, right? So all of a sudden now I've got 2 bottlenecks out of the way. I've got technicians who know they're not going to get bitched out for not having the right stuff because we've defined what that looks like. And you have faster quotes because I've got rich information going direct to the source that's going to talk to the customer. I think that's another example of refining processes too, but building into, like, it's not that we're trying to remove people out of the system. It's just there's too many people touching this thing. Why is so many people touching this opportunity?
I'm conscious of the fact that in the next episode, we're going to be talking about how to streamline company process. So I just reel me in if I'm going too deep. But one of the things I did want to talk about is how often we refine them, how often we review them, how often we update them, and then who's in charge of doing it. Because otherwise, it's just, I mean, as important as it is to update processes, and in my opinion, they should always be seen like a work in process or, a journey as opposed to a destination. But you've also got to be receptive of the fact, well, okay, I don't want my second year apprentice out there rewriting processes on how to install a air conditioning condenser. So
yeah, we have it's funny, that was an early concern. So speaking to why, how you build a knowledge repository and do that effectively, within workflows, you could say, hey, if you're a senior guy, you're going to get an option in your workflow to say, hey, is there a training opportunity here? I'm doing a pump compressor change out. I want to show how I do a thermal overload replacement, sensor replacement on this compressor, whatever the case may be. How do we audit that? So this kind of illustrates two things. Number one, making sure someone didn't fix something with barbecue sauce and duct tape, right? Let's make sure that we fix it correctly. We're in the South, dude. There's got to be barbecue sauce in the conversation or something somewhere. We're going to talk hot chicken and whiskey will be the next analogy. So you think about that and you go, okay, I want someone to audit that. So when my guys are making training content, I want my guy looking at it going, dude, that's not a training video, whatever the case may be. So we built in auto sharing in our system. So all of our content being taken in the field gets shot to the sales team, like we mentioned, the training folks, the customer, all that's automated and hyperlinked. So you're not sending big files. But I think it also illustrates the value of having a tool like that and it needing to be raw. I think when we talk about those use cases, there's a lot of manufacturers, man, that make training content that's some dude in a lab. And he's like, all right, here you go. And this is how you do it next. And it's like, and technicians are like, dude, do you see half the Frankenstein systems I deal with? Like, I wish it looked just like that. Also, I don't have a lot of respect for the guy that's sitting there in his, suit telling me how to fix a problem. And so there's something to be said too about reliability or the rawness that creates reliability for people when they go, oh, this person's dirty and hot like me fixing something or dealing with something. It makes it more real, and tangible in terms of being able to use content like that. So I think that ties into.
That's a really good point. And for something that I find works a lot better is if it's coming from somebody in the trenches, excuse the pun, it's a lot more relatable and they're a lot more happy to follow the process when they can relate to that person a lot more. Yeah. So I totally get that. And this is something that we say to a lot of our clients as well. It's like, this is why it's so important to get your team buying into the process and get them creating the systems for you. First of all, because you don't want to be creating every system. That's a freaking nightmare. But second of all, they've probably got a much better idea of how to do it than you do. You've been sitting in the office for 10 years and all you do is send out emails and drink coffee according to them. So, that's kind of where I was getting at before when I was saying getting the team to buy into the process. And are we going to talk about that in streamlining company processes, or is that something we can talk about now?
Yeah, I think that in terms of buying into the process, that is really important as well. I mean, there's a reason why there's 50, 60,000 technician only Facebook groups where you're going to see techs posting problems, happy to put their name and face next to a problem. Not super happy to call their boss and admit they don't know how to fix something, right? That's been one of our biggest challenges around live video, with customers early on. We mentioned in the last episode, the virtual service center. That takes some cultural shifts, right? Because you have to go, hey, this isn't going to impact your performance review. You can make a call in, it's okay. And no one's going to say, oh, you idiot, you don't know how to do that. That's one of the biggest fears you come across. Yeah. Is this idea of hey, you're going to be punished for asking for help, which is why a lot of those kind of ad hoc groups kind of happen. And those are good things too. I'm not saying those are bad things, but I think it signals kind of that mindset, right? And I think most human beings struggle with that. It's like, yeah, I don't want to look insufficient. Yeah, it's pride, and so creating pathways for guys to feel that's an example of how to do that. I think is to create a situation where they have something offline they can just personally interact with in a meaningful way, or adjusting culture to say, hey, we all need help. It's really interesting, man. A stat that I thought was super compelling as we got those virtual service centers going is that the older guys, I would say mid-level guys. So guys that have been doing it 10, 15 years, not guys that have been doing it 30, they called the most. more than even the young guys. The reason is because they had gotten past that ego of their youth, and they were like, I'm not going to beat my head against this problem for the next 2 hours. Like, I'm just going to get some help.
Yeah.
Well, or, guide me,
Yeah.
right? Give me the line of logic so that I can kind of figure it out. It brings up another point about live call. A lot of old school people, in this, since we're talking about those three pieces, would say, hey man, I had to shadow someone for 27 years and these young people and all their technology, right? I think that's true to some extent. You don't use live call to tell them the answer. You use it to be a virtual mentor. So the best companies we see do this, they don't get on a live call and go, yeah, just do this, this, and this, and you're done. All right, go away. They go, all right, what have you done so far? And then one of the funniest things is like, have you put your freaking gauges on it? Dude, put your gauges on it and call me back. Like, tell me where you're, what readings you're getting. There's always those frustrations. But also like, all right, what have you done and what do you think you should do next? Why? Right? There's opportunities to virtually mentor too. It's not just a call center where I just ramble through a bunch of answers until I get there. There's opportunities to go, all right, let's think about this. Let's talk through A, B, C, D. And it allows there for teaching moments that you wouldn't have because people don't have the resources to shadow for, 6, 12, 18 months anymore. So anyway, I'm rambling on.
Well, not so much. And it's amazing. I mean, we've done podcasts in the past, well, quite a lot actually on, HR related topics, recruitment, onboarding, retention and training. And there's this crazy statistic, which I can't remember, but when you're talking about company retention, companies that invest in training their staff in a smart way, which is kind of, I think, what you just highlighted then, like they have a much higher retention rate than the other companies that have that negative mindset around, well, if you call up because you don't know how to do something and you ask for information, you're a dickhead, that kind of common negativity, which is certainly what I was used to when I was in the trade. Like it was like, well, if you don't know, what are you a plumber or not? Like, what are you asking me this for? Sort of that whole mentality. So I think again, there's a ripple effect, right? Like, sure, this is just a way that we can help these guys get through this job. But then what you're not seeing is potentially how much they're actually appreciating and valuing the fact that you're giving them time, investing your time in helping them do their job the best way they possibly can. And of course that, if you're going to put an umbrella over all of it, I'd be calling that leadership. Yeah,
no, that's a great point. I think retention and recruitment, it's a big piece as well. When you talk about technology, these kids, as we say, these younger people, I mean, their whole world they've known has been, I've got any information I could ever think about at my fingertips at all times. Yet they come into a trade and it's like, well, yeah, go online for that. Or maybe so-and-so will have it. Or maybe your boss will not be on 27 other calls and be able to help you. By the way, you're by yourself and you're on a rooftop, you're at a job site. So figure it out. And I think the ability to be able to surface options for them is a good recruitment tool. In fact, I know, for our customers, it has been, I think any technology, not just XOI, but, you don't invest for that purpose. But if you can find those tools that start to appeal to a younger generation, to say, you're going to be equipped in ways you're not going to be equipped at my competitor, right, to do your job. And we're going to give you, technology that you're used to using in other parts of your life. I mean, I always make my sister's 19 years old. I said, but choose a big age gap. I'm almost 38. So it's been interesting watching her, through high school. I don't think she used her phone to freaking call people. Dude, it was like, it's videos, everything they do. Yeah. I mean, I got Instagram and TikTok, I'm going to say things to make myself feel old, but like everything is video content, right? It's consuming video content, making video content. I saw a statistic that was like 85% of the world's web activity is content, over the next couple of years. So
did you also see the statistic that says 75% of statistics are made up?
I sure did, but I'm going to stand on it till the cows come home, Matt.
Do you know what's funny on that topic? And it's not funny. It annoys the shit out of me, and it's something I have to deal with daily almost. But the landscape of video being so prevalent in the day-to-day lives that we live, and basically, I won't even say from a work point of view, like just in general, like you're talking about, people like, oh, here's a video of the breakfast I made. Like, who the fuck cares, but whatever. Like, it's so prevalent. People just use video all the time. But then, like, when we try to get our clients to be proactive in capturing through video projects that they've done, they clam up in front of the camera. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I just watched the Facebook Live of you walking your dog. Like, no one cares about that. Like, I don't know, I think humans are funny, man. They have these like they fabricate these fears and they put these blocks up for things that it's completely fabricated. Like it's bizarre to me.
Yeah. Our whole business is around video content. So great fun stories about that kind of stuff. But guys that don't want to hear their voice, we'd see these videos come in and they're like, no one loves the sound of their voice, right? But some guys being more sensitive than others, there are these videos come in, man, of systems, and it's like a freaking French movie. Like what's happening? It's just like these guys walking around a system. It's like, I don't like the sound of my voice. It's like, dude, you gotta tell us what you're working on. And the corollary, I've seen guys in their 50s buy selfie sticks so that they can show their customer on the roof, like, hey, I'm up here getting rained on for you, Mr. Customer, right? And they're up there we're using our platform to show them, and customers love it. They really engage with it. So I think there's some value. Yeah, all the influencers aside, I won't get started on that soapbox.
We literally just wrapped up a series called Mastering Storytelling with some colleagues, some celebrity trade people in Australia. And they were covering off on those things, how the framework about creating content. It was really interesting. Because they were like a lot of people, he was a builder, and he was like, I don't want to be in front of a camera. And then all of a sudden he's forced to be in front of a camera. Anyway, now I'm rambling. So let's wrap this up. We're going to come back with the final episode, which is streamlining company policy, processes, and that will wrap up the series. So this was part 2 of the Creating the Ultimate Communication Framework in Your Trade Business series. I'm speaking with my co-host in this series here, Mr. Aaron Salow from xoi.io. Aaron, thanks again for your time, man. We're going to come back and record the last episode, and that'll wrap up the series.
Thanks, you.
Rock and roll. See you, folks.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.